So imagine staring down a hissing, rattling, literal two-headed snake in the pitch black of the 1654 Virginia wilderness.
Oh man, that is terrifying.
Right. I mean, you're exhausted, you're freezing, and you are taking this massive risk, like literally risking everything you have
Yeah.
just to save the person you love.
Yeah, the stakes are incredibly high.
Totally. And now, I want you to just hold that thought for a second. Imagine that exact same desperate do-or-die survival instinct. But this time it's playing out hundreds of years later in a super chic but violently volatile 1970s Parisian apartment.
Which is quite the jump.
It is. But welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking a stack of your sources, excerpts from two incredibly interwoven narratives by Carol M Mottershead, and we're figuring out what they actually have to say about human survival.
Right, and I mean, on the surface, these sources look like they belong in completely different universes.
Oh, absolutely.
We have Memories of, which is this intense historical drama anchored in the really untamed reality of 17th century colonial Virginia. And then right next to it, we have The Elixir of Immortality and The Silent Witness.
Which is a whole different vibe.
Completely. That one's a supernatural investigative thriller set amidst, gritty journalism and European stock market scandals in 1977.
But the deeper you read into both of them, the more those walls just dissolve.
Yeah, they really do.
Our mission today is to basically unravel exactly how these drastically different timelines are connected by an ancient elixir, the heavy psychological price of keeping secrets, and the terrifying lengths people will go to when they're pushed into a corner.
It's a lot to cover.
It's a wild ride.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to encounter a centuries-old pharmaceutical conspiracy, a totally botched guillotine execution, and dive really deep into the stark reality of coercive control.
So where do we start?
Let's start with that wilderness crisis I mentioned at the top. It's 1654. We're on an island plantation in Virginia owned by a man named Hugh Gwynn. And, well, things are catastrophic.
Catastrophic is definitely the right word for it. A mysterious, deadly disease has broken out on the plantation. The water supply is contaminated, people are dying rapidly, and the local doctor is just entirely out of ideas.
He's useless at this point.
Pretty much. And in the middle of this total nightmare, we meet John Punch. He's an indentured servant, and his beloved wife, Anne, has contracted the disease.
Oh, it's so sad.
It really is. She is fighting fast-like, so weak she can barely even swallow water.
I really want to pause on John's status here, because being an indentured servant completely changes the stakes of this whole thing.
Mm.
He doesn't have agency. He doesn't have wealth or freedom, right?
Exactly. He's basically property in the eyes of the law.
So when he hears this vague rumor about a pale-faced medicine woman living with the Powhatan Indians up north who can supposedly cure literally any illness, his options are basically non-existent.
Right. He can't just ask for time off. To go after this cure, John has to commit what is essentially a capital offense.
Which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, he secures, which is just a really polite way of saying he steals Hugh Gwynn's best horse.
Not just any horse.
No, it's a highly valuable, sure-footed Narragansett pacer named Major.
So he takes this horse and embarks on this 3 to 4 day journey into completely unforgiving terrain. I mean, we are talking tidal rivers, dense forests, and constant threats.
It's basically a suicide mission.
And the sources really ground you in the visceral terror of this ride. Take his very first night camping out. He is exhausted. He is terrified for his wife. He's sitting by this dying fire, and suddenly he's just jolted awake.
Oh, the scene in the woods.
Yes. He sees eyes reflecting in the dark, really low to the ground.
He hears that low hiss and then, the rattle.
So he grabs a piece of burning wood in one hand, his shotgun in the other, and he fires a warning shot. The firelight flares up and he sees it. It's a hissing, rattling, literal, two-headed snake inching toward Major, his only lifeline.
Which is just bizarre.
He shoots it, obviously, to protect the horse, but then he does something that I found so profoundly human and just, strange. He packs the dead two-headed snake into his empty saddlebag.
Yeah, that part is so fascinating.
Why? Because he thinks his grandson would be fascinated by it.
It's a brilliant psychological detail in the text, really. I mean, here's a man surrounded by death, riding on a desperate mission, and he takes a moment to secure a souvenir for a future he isn't even sure he'll live to see.
It's like this anchoring act of hope.
Exactly. But he pushes on, he actually reaches the Powhatan camp, and this is where your sources really begin to bleed into one another.
Right, because he finds the medicine woman. Her name is Perenelle. She has skin as pale as the moon and speaks with a French accent, which is super out of place. But to John Punch, she is just a miracle worker who happens to live with the patents.
What's fascinating here is who this medicine woman actually is. If we pull in your 1977 source, we realize Perenelle is an immortal.
Mind-blowing.
Right. Her healing ability isn't some local wilderness magic. It originates from a 21-page manuscript that was stolen by an old, starving monk from the archives in the Holy City centuries earlier.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Ah,
Because the origin story of this manuscript completely blew my mind.
it is pretty wild.
The text says this group called the Elixirs, who basically styled themselves as the protectors of medicines and poisons, they developed this elixir. They gave it to their own soldiers to make them invincible.
Right, superhuman soldiers.
But they actively kept it a secret from the rest of the world. And the reason why? Because they were making a fortune selling completely fake, ineffective cures to sick people.
They were grifters on a massive scale.
If they released a single potion that actually cured everything, their business model would just collapse. It feels like a 17th century big pharma conspiracy.
It's very close to that, but with a terrifying historical twist. It wasn't just about corporate greed, it was heavily tied into religious fanaticism.
Oh, right, the God aspect.
Yeah, you see, this manuscript contained words that the Phylax genuinely believed were directly from God. That meant they couldn't just burn it or destroy it to protect their profit margins, because that would be outright blasphemy.
So what did they do?
So they compromised. They separated the formula from the recipe, and they locked those pages away, guarded by the very soldiers who had tested the potion, this militant group known as the Custotics.
Oh.
Yeah, they were blending absolute greed with religious terror.
And somehow, Perenelle gets her hands on these stolen pages. She works on them in secret, tirelessly translating them, because unlike the Phylax, she actually wants to end human suffering.
But the sources make a critical pivot here. Perenelle eventually achieves immortality, sure, but it is never presented to the reader as a gift.
No, not at all.
It is a terrifying, heavy burden. I mean, before she perfects it, she tests an early version on her dying husband, but he still dies anyway, leaving her just drowning in guilt. And her immortality forces her family to constantly distance themselves from humanity. They have to keep moving, changing identities, and basically living in eternal isolation so their true nature isn't discovered.
Which naturally brings up this suffocating feeling of having to hide who you really are. Perenelle is trapped by a supernatural secret, but that completely mirrors what the mortal characters in both timelines are going through.
Yeah, absolutely.
They are keeping secrets that turn their everyday lives into prisons. Let's jump back to 1654 and look at Elizabeth, the wife of the plantation owner, Hugh Gwynn. On paper, she's the respectable mistress of the house.
But beneath that veneer is a lifetime of staggering societal shame.
Right.
20 years before the events of the story, Elizabeth had a single passionate night with Hugh before they were married, before they were even properly courting.
And there were huge consequences for that.
Yes. She ended up secretly bearing his son, a boy she named Jack, but who was baptized and raised as John Gwynn Fielding.
And the social consequences for this in the 17th century were absolute. Her family completely shunned her. They slapped her with the label of Thornback, which was this highly derogatory term for an older, unmarriageable spinster.
Such a cruel term.
They basically forced her into a life of servitude, making her a caretaker for a cruel aunt. She was completely stripped of her motherhood, only allowed to see her own son for half a day each month.
It's just devastating.
And even now, 20 years later, legally married to Hugh, she is still paralyzed by this secret. She is terrified to tell Hugh that his trusted stepson is actually his biological son.
She is locked in a prison built by societal shame and fear of male authority. Now, if we fast forward and draw a parallel to your 1977 source, we see a very different, yet psychologically identical kind of prison.
This is where we meet Dorothy.
Right, Dorothy, an investigative journalist living in Paris.
And Dorothy is tough. Like, she is fiercely independent and on the verge of a massive scoop. She and Perenelle's immortal stepson, Nicky, are staked out outside Balmet's prison in Marseille.
Waiting for an execution.
Yeah, there's supposed to be a double execution by guillotine, but in the middle of the night, this mysterious, unexplained ambulance rolls up, and only one man ends up being executed.
Super sketchy.
The authorities throw up an absolute wall of silence. Dorothy knows she has a massive story tied to the mystery of a specific license plate, MP007FX.
So professionally, she is fearless. But personally, Dorothy is going home every night to a toxic trap. She lives with her boyfriend, George, and George's life is currently spiraling completely out of control.
Because of the bank.
Right, exactly. He recently got promoted at his bank, which sounds great, until he discovers that his predecessor vastly mismanaged the French stock market, the FCHI.
Oh, wow.
There have been massive illegal insider dealings with investors' money. The bank didn't promote George because he was talented. They deliberately promoted him to be the scapegoat when the inevitable collapse happens.
So George's career is essentially over before it has even started, and he is facing total ruin. But instead of being vulnerable or confiding in Dorothy, his immense stress metastasizes into this violent, terrifying rage directed entirely at her.
It's awful to read.
He starts coming home drunk. He baselessly accuses her of planning to leave him, and it escalates to physical attacks. There's a deeply disturbing scene where he throws scalding hot coffee all over her chest and violently tears her clothes.
The psychological manipulation here is textbook coercive control. And what the author does so well is show the actual mechanism of it.
Right, the cycle.
It's not just constant violence. After George abuses her, the very next day he tries to smooth it over with a romantic candlelit dinner. He acts as if the violence never even happened, and he weaponizes his own victimhood at work to excuse his monstrous behavior at home.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I want to talk about how the text actually frames this kind of abuse. A lot of people outside these situations might ask, why doesn't she just leave?
Yeah, that's a common misconception.
But the abuse doesn't happen all at once. It's less like a sudden attack and more like being trapped in a funhouse mirror maze. At first, the distortion is slight. He makes a mean comment, you laugh it off.
Right, you dismiss it.
But over time, the abuser keeps shifting the mirrors. They isolate you from your friends, they gaslight your memory of events, until you completely lose your sense of what's real and what's just a reflection of their rage. You don't realize you're trapped until you literally can't find the exit.
That's a highly accurate way to look at it. Psychologically, what George is doing with the coffee attack followed by the romantic dinner is a mechanism called intermittent reinforcement.
Which is so dangerous.
Oh, incredibly.
Yeah.
By alternating extreme terror with extreme affection, the abuser creates a trauma bond. The victim becomes biologically addicted to the relief that the abuser provides from the very pain the abuser inflicted.
Wow, so the abuser is both the poison and the cure.
Exactly. It makes leaving feel psychologically impossible. And your sources offer a brilliant external analysis of this dynamic through Nicky's immortal perspective. He watches abusers slowly, incrementally isolate their victims, punishing them for any independent thought.
And this connects beautifully to Nicky's immortal mother, Joan. This was honestly one of my favorite details in the entire deep dive.
It's so clever.
We find out that Joan was the original creator of the famous Punch and Judy puppet shows.
It's a fantastic historical twist. But Joan didn't create those shows to entertain children.
No.
She used them as a covert public service announcement. She embedded blatant scenes of domestic violence into the puppet shows to train audiences. She would explicitly tell the children watching, if you see Mr. Punch do anything to hurt Baby or Judy, you must shout out, you must yell at him.
That is just incredible. I mean, a centuries-old immortal realizing that the mortal justice system won't protect women in the home, so she spends centuries secretly training society to not ignore domestic abuse, to literally practice calling it out when they see it in public.
Exactly. She understood the complete paralysis of domestic violence. But the harsh realization for Dorothy in 1977 and for John Punch back in 1654 is that no one is coming to save them.
Yeah, it's on them.
You cannot passively survive a toxic environment, whether you are trapped by a rigged banking system, a violently manipulative partner, or a disease ravaging your wife. Endurance is not enough. You eventually have to take action. You have to make a terrifying leap into the unknown.
Which brings us to the actual crossings these characters have to make to break free. Let's look at the literal physical crossings first. Remember John Punch rushing back with the elixir from Paranel?
Oh, the river scene.
Yes, he has to cross the Potomac River. It's dark, the water is freezing, the tide is aggressively turning against him, and there are even local rumors of sharks getting stranded in the shallows.
The peril is just absolute.
He has to trust his horse, wade into the black water, knowing that a single misstep in the current could mean a drowning death for him and certain death for Anne wading back the plantation.
And if we look at 1977, Nicky is facing his own terrifying crossing over the North Sea.
Oh, right, trying to get to England.
Yeah, he's trying to get to England to track down his mother, Joan. But because he is immortal, he's constantly changing identities and living off the grid. He doesn't have a valid passport.
Which is a huge problem.
So he has to negotiate a €100 bribe with a very rough, highly suspicious cargo ship captain just to work his passage across the dangerous waters.
And the captain doesn't exactly offer a warm welcome, does he? He tells Nicky a story that completely chills the blood.
Yes, the captain tells him the local legend of the monkey hanging.
Which is so bizarre.
During the Napoleonic Wars, a French ship wrecked off the coast of an isolated English village. The locals went down to the beach and found a single survivor. The legend says it was either a literal monkey dressed in a military uniform acting as a ship's mascot, or, much more horrifyingly, a young French powder monkey. Basically a little boy.
Wow, that's dark.
Driven by intense wartime paranoia and deep xenophobia of the unknown, the locals didn't help the survivor. They gave this creature a mock trial right there on the beach, and they hanged it as a French spy.
It is such a dark, unsettling story to tell a passenger. Like, why does the captain even tell him that?
He tells it as a warning. It's not just a spooky maritime ghost story. It's a psychological case study on how closed, fearful societies treat the undocumented or the unknown.
Oh, I see.
The captain is highlighting the intense danger Nicky faces as an outsider. If Nicky's true nature or his lack of papers is discovered, he won't be met with empathy or understanding. He will be met with the exact same xenophobic mob terror that hung the monkey on the beach. He is sailing into a fundamentally hostile world.
But he takes the leap anyway. He gets on the boat, just like Dorothy makes her own metaphorical crossing. Let's go back to that moment with the scalding coffee.
Such a tense scene.
George attacks her, grabs her by the neck, and pulls her backward. Dorothy reaches out to steady herself, and her hand falls on a vegetable knife in the kitchen. Without even thinking, pure survival instinct kicks in. She grabs the knife and holds it directly to George's throat.
It is a moment of pure, icy clarity.
Exactly. She realizes in that split second that she is entirely capable of killing him to survive. It terrifies her, but it also shatters those funhouse mirrors. It snaps her awake.
The illusion is broken.
So the next morning, after George's manipulative romantic dinner and his attempts at makeup sex, Dorothy wakes up to George screaming at her again. Why? Because she has the audacity to go to work instead of staying home to comfort him over his bank fraud issues.
The intermittent reinforcement cycle starts over, but this time it just doesn't work.
Right. That is the final straw. She doesn't argue. She grabs her bags, walks out the door, and goes straight to the train station. She literally jumps onto the automated train to Marseille just as the doors are closing.
A literal leap.
She chooses her career. She chooses the danger of investigating license plate NP007FX. And she leaves the toxic, comfortable familiarity of George completely behind her.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what these intertwined sources are really arguing is that true survival isn't just about drinking a magical potion to stay alive.
No, not at all.
We see that immortality didn't save Perenelle's family from fear, it just forced them to hide in the shadows forever. True survival requires the agonizing bravery to leave what is familiar, even if it's dangerous, even if you don't have a passport and might face a xenophobic mob, even if the river is freezing, you have to step out of the prison and into the unknown.
So what does this all mean? We've traced a really wild path from the tobacco plantations of 1654 Virginia to the chic, toxic apartments of 1977 Europe. We've seen two-headed snakes, ancient manuscripts stolen from holy archives, international stock market fraud, and the heavy, very real mechanics of surviving domestic abuse.
You saw quite the journey.
How do we even synthesize all of these seemingly disparate threads?
Ultimately, your sources present us with a profound contrast between two ways of existing. On one hand, you have the immortals. They possess the ultimate cure for death. They have won the biological lottery.
Right, they can't die.
But the price of that secret is eternal isolation. To survive the world, they must constantly hide from it. On the other hand, you have the mortals, John Punch, Elizabeth, Dorothy. Their lives are incredibly fragile.
Super fragile.
They are temporary, prone to disease, susceptible to societal shame and physical violence. But it is exactly that fragility that forces them to act. They don't have the luxury of hiding for centuries. They must boldly face the world's dangers in the short time they have to truly live.
It really makes you look at survival and vulnerability in a completely different light, which leaves you, the listener, with a final thought to ponder long after we wrap up here. Imagine you were the one who stumbled upon that monk's 21-page manuscript today.
That's a heavy question.
Would you brew the elixir? Knowing that cheating death meant accepting a life of eternal secrecy, constantly looking over your shoulder in the shadows while everyone you love fades away? Or is the fragile, temporary, and deeply vulnerable nature of a normal human life exactly what gives us the courage to make bold choices, cross the dark rivers, and love deeply?
It's the ticking clock that makes the time matter.
Exactly. When the X-ray machine breaks, when the river is freezing and you are forced into the muddy waters of the unknown, maybe that's where life actually begins. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.